So what we have is what's called the root word structure. Now, let's take a word like inhabitants. Now, the word inhabitants is a Romance Latin-based word. Now, these words are broken up into separate sections. So, what we have here is three parts of a word. The first part is called the prefix. Always goes in the beginning of the word. The next part is called the root. Now, this is the main part of the word. This is the important thing that we need to understand, okay? And at the end of the word, we have the suffix. Now, when we want to understand the meaning of a Romance or Latin-based word, the first thing we want to do is find the meaning of the root word. Now, so taking the root word alone, the word habit, we ask ourselves, okay, what is a habit? In Italian, habito. In Spanish, habito. Now, a habit, this is something that is a routine, something I do a lot, something I do every day. A habit of mine, every day I wake up in the morning, I go down to my local coffee shop, and I have a coffee. It's a habit. So, a habit, let's call it a routine, something you do every day. Okay, so there's our habit. Now, let's look at our prefix. Now, in this case, this one's easy. The prefix in has two meanings. It could either mean inside, like into, or a negative of something. In this case, it is inside. Inside of. Right? Great. So now we have the prefix and the root word. The routine inside. And now the suffix ants. Now this one's a little bit more difficult and not so obvious. What we need to do is instead of trying to translate something, you know, that old bad habit, that bad practice of connecting words to words, we don't want to do that. We need to understand why things are what they are, not just what they are, right? So let's think of some other words that we know that use the same suffix ants. Words like participants or contestants or defendant. Now, what do all these words have in common with the suffix ants? People. Now we can see a similarity with Spanish and Italian. In Spanish, the suffix is antes. In Italian, antis. In English, ants. This means people. So now that we have the three parts of the word, the prefix, the root, and the suffix, we can figure out what they mean. So let's check it out. So if I were to want to know, who are the inhabitants of Portugal? So who are the inhabitants of Portugal? The people inside every day. Now, the people inside Portugal every day are the Portuguese people. Simple. Let's look at a different word. Let's use the same root word and change the suffix. Now, we need to use the exact same practice here. First thing we do, find our root word and the meaning of that root word. Again, habit, a routine. Now, at is a preposition we use to describe a specific thing. In this case, it's a place, usually time or space. So in this case, it's a place. So at a certain location or place. So we ask ourselves, what is the habitat of the lion? The lion. So the routine every day at this specific place. So the habitat of the lion is the savannah. Routine at this place. Habitat of a lion is the savannah. Good. Let's look at a different word. The word discovered. So what do you think is the root word here? Now, if you said cover, you'd be correct. Okay. So the root word cover means to hide, protect, or obscure. All right. So let's say hide. To make something unseen. Now, the prefix dis is a very commonly used prefix. It means to undo something. Now, this suffix ed is extremely commonly used, and this represents something that happened in the past. So let's take, for example, Mount Vesuvius here near Naples, Rome. Naples, Italy, I'm sorry. So let's say we have Mount Vesuvius here, a very famous volcano. All right. And down here near Vesuvius, we have the city of Pompeii. Now, Vesuvius erupts in a very famous eruption, and covers Pompeii with volcanic ash. Covered. Now, about almost 2,000 years later, as the story is told, an Italian farmer was digging in his field one day and overturned a piece of marble. And on that piece of marble was inscribed the word Pompeia. And he realized that he had discovered the lost city of Pompeii. So he continued to dig and remove layers of soil until he had discovered Pompeii. Covered, discovered. Again, Vesuvius covered Pompeii. The farmer discovered Pompeii. Good. Now, let's give one more little bit more complicated example. With the word disassociation. Now, finding the root word here can be a little bit more difficult, but we have to be logical. Now, what we need to remember is these words came from Latin. Now, the Romans didn't invent language. I'm not even sure they invented their own language. Much of Latin was borrowed from the neighboring cultures of the Etruscans and the ancient Greeks. Now here we have an ancient Greek root word. And that root is socia. In this case, we actually have 2 prefixes and 1 suffix. Now, as always, let's start with the root word, socia. Social, society. Let's say, for a rough translation, it means together. Now, so the way this works with 2 prefixes here is in the order that it happened. Now, the S part of the prefix happened first and the dis happened after. So they go in this order. Prefix 1, prefix 2. Let's start with prefix 1, as, which means an increase of a value. For example, ascend. Okay, now, we know from the previous example that the prefix dis means to undo something or the opposite. So we've got those figured out. Now, shun is the overall state of something, like organization, administration. All right, so it's a state. We'll explain the concept of state in a coming video. So now, disassociation. So we start with socia and our first prefix, which is as, association. Now, let's say we have 3 individuals. Right? These 3 individuals, they want to work together on a project. So they come together, right? And they form let's make this one blue, an association. Right? So here we go. We'll underline this word. It is now an association. Okay. Now, 3 or 4 years pass, and these 3 individuals decide they are finished. They're not going to work together anymore. Let's make this green. So these individuals, after finishing working together, they now go their separate ways. They are no longer associated. And now it is a disassociation. Great. So now, once we start to recognize these words, so remember, more than 2 syllables, probably Latin. Find the root word, find where you are, recognize prefixes and suffixes that you know, and figure it out from there. This will help you actually understand the concepts of the word, not just a translation, okay? And once you start to recognize this, you will start to see these words everywhere. Even places you don't expect. A word like agenda. Now, the root word here is gen. Gen is an organization or grouping of something. For example, gender, male or female. Generation, groups of a similar age grouped into things. An agenda is something used to group and organize time. So having a good understanding of this concept is extremely important in English. It is a foundation of the language. And if I were to give an honest estimate, I would say about 35% of the words in English are Latin based. Now, once you understand this, it immediately opens you up to thousands of words in English and gets us away from that really bad practice of always trying to translate and use our native as a language, to use our native language as a crutch, which is something we definitely don't want to do. So thank you so much for viewing this first video and the introduction to English and the Online Language Pro, OnlyFans, and Twitch account. And we're really excited about this, and we're looking forward to seeing you again. Thanks, and have a lovely day.